Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've been driving trucks for about 15 years now. Long hauls, mostly. The kind where you're on the road for days at a time, sleeping in your cab, eating at whatever truck stop happens to be open when your stomach starts growling. You get used to the loneliness. You get used to the highways all looking the same stretch of asphalt blurring past your windshield, the same yellow lines disappearing under your tires. But you never really get used to the weird stuff. And I've seen plenty of weird stuff. This story starts on Interstate 40, somewhere between Amarillo and Albuquerque. It's a route I've driven at least 100 times. I could probably do it with my eyes closed at this point. Rolling plains, scattered mesas in the distance, not much else. There's a particular stretch, about 60 miles outside of Tucumcari, New Mexico, where there's absolutely nothing. No towns, no gas stations, just empty land and the occasional tumbleweed rolling across the highway. I'd driven through there on a Tuesday afternoon, heading west with a load of furniture bound for Phoenix. The sun was starting to dip low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful, really, if you're not too tired to appreciate it. I was making good time, no traffic, smooth sailing. About 20 miles past the New Mexico state line, I saw something I'd never noticed before. A diner. It was one of those old-fashioned roadside places, all chrome and neon, with a big sign out front that read Dusty's Diner in cursive letters. The parking lot was empty except for a single car, some beat-up sedan that looked like it hadn't moved in years. Now, I should mention that I'd driven this route more times than I could count, and I'd never seen this diner before. Not once. But truck drivers get tired, you know. Your brain plays tricks on you. I figured maybe I'd just never noticed it, or maybe it had been closed every other time I'd passed through. Either way, I was hungry, and the idea of a hot meal sounded a hell of a lot better than the stale sandwich I had wrapped in foil back in the cab. I pulled into the parking lot. Gravel crunched under my tires. The place looked like it had been pulled straight out of the 1950s. Red vinyl booths visible through the windows, a jukebox in the corner, black and white checkered floor. The neon sign buzzed faintly, flickering every few seconds like it was struggling to stay lit. When I stepped out of the truck, the first thing that hit me was the silence. No wind, no crickets, no distant hum of traffic, just dead quiet, the kind that makes your ears ring. The air smelled strange too. Like dust and something metallic, almost like old pennies. I walked up to the front door. There was a small bell that jingled when I pushed it open. Inside, the diner was exactly as it had looked from the outside. Retro, clean, well-maintained, but empty. Completely empty. No waitress, no cook, no customers. Just rows of empty booths and that jukebox in the corner. Silent and dark. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed off the walls. Nothing. I stood there for a moment, waiting. It wasn't unusual for a small diner in the middle of nowhere to be understaffed. But this felt different. It felt wrong. The lights were on. The coffee machine behind the counter was still warm. I could see steam rising from the pot. There were even menus laid out on the counter, like someone had just been there seconds before I walked in. I took a few steps toward the counter. The floor creaked under my boots. That's when I noticed the smell. Underneath the dust and metallic scent was something else. Something rotten, not strong, but there, like old meat left out in the sun. "Hello?" I tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. I should have left right then. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around and walk out. But I was tired and hungry, and part of me was curious. Where the hell was everyone? I walked around the counter into the kitchen. It was just as clean and empty as the dining area. Stainless steel surfaces, a grill, a fryer, everything spotless. But no one there. On the counter near the grill there was a plate of food, eggs, bacon, toast, still warm. I could see steam rising from the eggs. Someone had been here. Recently. I backed out of the kitchen and headed for the door. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere in the back of the diner. Not the kitchen, somewhere else. Maybe a storage room or an office. "Is someone there?" I called out, my hand already on the door handle. The footsteps stopped. I waited. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Nothing. Then, from the back of the diner, I heard a voice. Faint, almost a whisper. "We're closed." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. The lights were on. The door was unlocked. The food was warm. "But we're closed." I didn't wait to hear anything else. I pushed through the door and walked quickly back to my truck. I didn't run, didn't look back. Just got in, started the engine, and pulled out of that parking lot as fast as I could without kicking up too much gravel. As I drove away, I glanced in my side mirror. The diner was still there, neon sign flickering in the growing darkness. But something looked different. The lights inside were off now, completely dark. And I could swear, just for a second, I saw someone standing in the window, a figure, silhouetted against the glass, watching me leave. I didn't stop until I hit Albuquerque, and I didn't think much about it after that. Weird stuff happens on the road. You see strange things when you're tired. I chalked it up to exhaustion and forgot about it. 2 weeks later, I was heading back east, same route, same stretch of highway. It was late afternoon again, almost the same time of day. I was keeping an eye out for the diner, curious to see it in daylight, maybe stop and get a real meal this time, see if anyone was actually working. But when I got to the spot where it should have been, there was nothing, just empty land, no diner, no gravel parking lot, no neon sign, nothing. I slowed down, checked my mirrors, looked around. I was sure this was the spot. I remembered the mile marker, the shape of the mesa in the distance. This was it. But there was no diner. I pulled over onto the shoulder and got out, walked a few steps into the dirt. There was no sign that anything had ever been there. No foundation, no gravel, no trash, just scrub brush and dry earth. I got back in my truck and sat there for a while, trying to make sense of it. Maybe I'd been on a different part of the highway, maybe I'd misremembered. But I knew this route like the back of my hand. I hadn't misremembered anything. When I got home, I did some research. I looked up Dusty's Diner in New Mexico. I searched old maps, historical records, anything I could find. Nothing. No record of any diner by that name anywhere near that stretch of highway. I even called the New Mexico Department of Transportation, asked if there had ever been any roadside businesses in that area. They said no. That area had always been empty. I talked to a few other truckers, guys who'd been driving that route for years. None of them had ever seen a diner out there. One guy laughed at me, said I must have been dreaming, but I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I still drive that route. I have to. It's part of my job. And every time I pass that spot, I look. I keep waiting to see it again, that chrome and neon diner with the flickering sign and the empty parking lot. But it's never there. Except for one time. About 6 months after the first incident, I was heading west again. It was late at night this time, around 2 a.m. I was exhausted, running on coffee and sheer willpower. And there it was. The diner. Same spot. Same neon sign. Same beat-up sedan in the parking lot. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I just kept driving, eyes straight ahead, hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. As I passed, I glanced over. The lights were on inside, and I could see people. Not moving. Just sitting in the booths, perfectly still, all of them staring out the window, staring at me. I didn't look back. I don't know what that place is. I don't know why it appears and disappears. But I'll tell you this much. If you're ever driving through that stretch of highway between Amarillo and Albuquerque and you see a diner called Dusty's, don't stop. Just keep driving. Trust me. Some places aren't meant to be found. I'm a regional driver. I don't do the cross-country hauls like some guys. My routes are mostly in the Midwest, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois. Shorter trips, but I'm on the road 5 days a week, sometimes 6. You'd think the familiarity would make it easier, but sometimes knowing a route too well is worse. Because when something changes, you notice it immediately. This happened on Route 80, heading east through Pennsylvania. It's a route I'd driven probably 200 times, maybe more. I know every exit, every rest stop, every curve in the road. It's muscle memory at this point. I was hauling auto parts from Cleveland to Scranton. It was late October, one of those cold, gray days where the sky looks like concrete and the trees are mostly bare. I'd left Cleveland around 4 in the morning, trying to beat the morning traffic. By the time I hit the Pennsylvania border, the sun was just starting to come up, weak and pale behind the clouds. Everything was normal. Traffic was light. I had the radio on. Some classic rock station, the kind that plays the same 20 songs on repeat. I wasn't tired. I'd had plenty of sleep the night before and a thermos full of coffee sitting in the cup holder. I was awake, alert, paying attention. Around 7 in the morning, I saw a sign for exit 52. I didn't think much of it, just another exit. I'd passed it 100 times before. There's a gas station there, a little mom-and-pop place, and a McDonald's. Nothing special. I kept driving. About 10 minutes later, I saw another sign. Exit 52. I frowned. That didn't make sense. I should have been at exit 60-something by now. I glanced at my odometer. I'd definitely driven more than 10 miles, but there it was. Exit 52. Same gas station, same McDonald's. I figured maybe I'd misread the first sign. Easy mistake. I kept driving. 10 minutes later, exit 52. Again. This time I slowed down. I looked at the sign carefully. Exit 52. Clear as day. I checked my GPS. It showed me on Route 80, heading east, right where I was supposed to be. But according to the GPS, I was miles past exit 52. I pulled over onto the shoulder, put the truck in a park, and sat there for a minute. My heart was starting to beat a little faster. Something was wrong. This didn't make sense. I looked in my mirrors. The highway stretched out behind me, empty except for a few cars in the distance. Everything looked normal. I rubbed my eyes, took a sip of coffee, tried to shake off the weird feeling creeping up my spine. Maybe the signs were wrong. Maybe the state had screwed up and put up duplicate signs by mistake. It sounded stupid, but it was the only explanation that made sense. I pulled back onto the highway and kept driving. I kept my eyes on the road, on the mile markers, counting them as I passed. Everything seemed fine. The numbers were going up like they should, and then I saw it again. Exit 52. This time I didn't slow down. I just stared at it as I passed. Same gas station, same McDonald's, same everything. I should have been at exit 70 by now. I should have been halfway to Scranton. I checked my GPS again. It still showed me heading east, making progress. But the exits weren't matching up. The GPS said I was near exit 74. The sign said exit 52. I kept driving. I didn't know what else to do. 10 minutes later. Exit 52. My hands were starting to sweat. I turned off the radio. The silence felt better, less distracting. I needed to think. This wasn't possible. You don't just drive in a loop on a straight highway. That's not how roads work. I started looking for something, anything that was different, but everything was exactly the same. The same gas station, the same McDonald's, the same cluster of trees on the right side of the highway. It was like I was watching a video on repeat. Exit 52, again. I pulled over. This time I got out of the truck. I stood on the shoulders, staring at the sign. Exit 52, Pennsylvania. Plain as day. There were a few cars passing by, normal traffic. I flagged one down, a guy in a pickup truck. He rolled down his window, looked at me like I was crazy. "You okay, buddy?" he asked. "Yeah, I pointed at the sign. "Is that exit 52? He glanced at it. "Yeah, why?" "I've passed it 5 times. He stared at me. "What?" "I keep passing the same exit, over and over." He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "You feeling all right? You drunk or something?" "No, I'm not drunk. I'm telling you, I've been driving east for over an hour, and I keep seeing the same exit." He shook his head. "Man, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you should pull over and get some rest." He rolled up his window and drove off. I stood there, watching him disappear down the highway. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was losing it. But I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel drunk. I felt fine. I got back in the truck. I decided to do something different. This time, I'd take the exit. Maybe that would break whatever loop I was stuck in. I drove until I saw the sign again. Exit 52. I put my turn signal on and took the exit. The off-ramp curved to the right, leading down to a small intersection. The gas station was on the left, the McDonald's on the right, everything normal. I pulled into the gas station, parked, and got out. The air was cold, biting at my face. I walked inside. The clerk was a kid, maybe 19 or 20, playing on his phone behind the counter. "Hey," I said. "What exit is this?" He looked up. "What?" "The exit number." "What is it?" 52. "Why?" "You sure?" He gave me a weird look. "Yeah, I'm sure. I work here." I nodded, walked back outside. I stood in the parking lot, looking around. Everything seemed real, solid, normal. I got back in my truck and pulled out onto the road, following the signs to get back on the highway. I merged onto Route 80 East. The GPS recalculated. According to it, I was back on track heading towards Scranton. I felt a wave of relief. Maybe taking the exit had fixed it. Maybe it was over. I drove for about 10 minutes, and then I saw it. Exit 52. My chest tightened. No, this wasn't happening. I kept driving, exit 52, again and again and again. I lost track of how many times I passed it. 10? 15? I stopped counting. I just kept driving, gripping the wheel, my mind racing. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. And then, finally, something changed. I passed exit 52, and the next sign I saw was exit 53. I almost laughed. I wanted to scream. Exit 53. Finally, different. I kept driving, and the exits kept changing. 54, 55, 56. Everything was normal again. Whatever had happened, it was over. I made it to Scranton around 3 in the afternoon, hours later than I should have. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I didn't know how to explain it. I still don't. But here's the thing. A few months later, I drove that same route, and when I got to exit 52, I held my breath. I watched the signs carefully. I passed it once, and then I kept going. Exit 53, exit 54. Normal. Except when I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw something, just for a second. A truck identical to mine passing exit 52, and then passing it again and again. I didn't look back after that. I picked up a hitchhiker once. I know. You're not supposed to do that. Company policy strictly forbids it, and every driver I've ever met has a horror story about picking up some psycho on the side of the road. But I've been driving for 20 years, And in that time, I've given maybe 3 or 4 people rides. Usually they're just down on their luck folks who need to get to the next town. I figure, what's the harm? This was different. It was late August, somewhere in the Nevada desert. I was on Highway 50, the so-called loneliest road in America, and let me tell you, it lives up to the name. Miles and miles of nothing, no towns, no gas stations, just flat, empty desert stretching out in every direction. The heat out there is oppressive, the kind that makes the air shimmer and distorts the horizon. I'd been driving since dawn, hauling electronics from Reno to Salt Lake City. It was mid-afternoon and the sun was brutal. I had the AC cranked, windows up, sunglasses on. I wasn't planning on stopping for anything until I hit the next town, which was still a good 80 miles away. That's when I saw him. A guy standing on the side of the road. Middle of nowhere. No car in sight, no broken-down vehicle, nothing. Just a man in jeans and a faded blue t-shirt, holding a cardboard sign that read East. I should have kept driving. I almost did. But something about the way he was standing there, so calm, so still, made me slow down. He didn't wave, didn't try to flag me down. He just stood there, holding the sign, watching me approach. I pulled over. I don't know why. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was just the loneliness of the road getting to me. I rolled down the passenger window. The guy walked over, slow and easy, like he had all the time in the world. He was maybe in his 40s, weathered face, dark hair going gray at the temples. He had this strange smile, not quite friendly, but not threatening either. Just knowing. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "East," he said. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "I'm going to Salt Lake. That work for you?" "That works." He climbed into the cab, closed the door, and settled into the seat like he'd been riding with me for years. He didn't smell bad, didn't look dirty, just normal, except for that smile. I pulled back onto the highway. For a few minutes, we didn't say anything. I kept my eyes on the road, trying to ignore the weird feeling crawling up my spine. He just sat there, staring out the windshield. "Hot out," I said, trying to make conversation. "Always is," he replied. Another minute of silence. Then he turned to me. "You drive this route a lot, don't you, Paul?" I glanced at him. "Yeah, Wait, how do you know my name?" He smiled. "It's on your shirt." I looked down. My work shirt had a name patch. "Paul, right, of course." "Yeah," I said, trying to laugh it off. "I guess it is." But something felt off, the way he'd said it, like he already knew. "You've been on the road a long time," he continued. 20 years, give or take." I frowned. "How do you know that?" "You've got that look. The look of someone who's seen a lot of miles." I didn't like this. I didn't like the way he was talking like he knew more than he should. But I kept driving. What else was I supposed to do? Pull over and kick him out? We were in the middle of the desert. "Where are you from?" I asked, trying to turn the conversation. "Nowhere in particular," he said. I move around. "Family?" "Not anymore." The way he said it made me stop asking questions. We drove in silence for a while. The desert stretched out, endless and empty. I kept glancing at him out of the corner of my eye. He hadn't moved. He just sat there, staring ahead, that faint smile still on his face. "You ever drive this road at night, Paul?" he asked suddenly. "Sometimes." "Ever see anything strange?" I hesitated. "What do you mean?" "Lights, figures, things that don't belong." "No," I said too quickly. "Nothing like that." He nodded slowly. "That's good. Some roads, they remember things. They hold on to what's happened. And sometimes, if you drive them enough, you start to see it, the past, bleeding through." I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. This guy was starting to freak me out. Take this road, for example, he continued. A lot of people have died out here. Accidents, heat, desperation. You ever think about that when you're driving? All the people who didn't make it? Not really, I said. You should. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Look, man, I'm just trying to get to Salt Lake. If you want to ride, that's fine, but I don't need the philosophy lesson. He laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh, but it wasn't kind either. Fair enough. We drove in silence for another 10 minutes. I was starting to regret picking him up. The weird comments, the way he looked at me like he knew something I didn't, it was too much. I decided I'd drop him off at the next town and be done with it. That's when he said it. You were here before. I looked at him. What? You drove this road before, 2 weeks ago, Thursday, around noon. My heart skipped. He was right. I had driven this exact route 2 weeks ago. How do you know that? I asked, my voice tight. Because I saw you. Bullshit. I didn't see you. You weren't looking. I stared at him. He was still smiling. I was standing on the side of the road, he said. Right about where you picked me up. I had the same sign. You slowed down, just like you did today. But you didn't stop. You kept driving. I didn't remember that. I didn't remember seeing anyone. And the time before that, he continued. 3 months ago, you drove past me again. And the time before that. And the time before that. Stop, I said. Just stop. How many times have you driven this road, Paul? 50, 100. How many times have you passed me and you just didn't notice? Get out. What? Get out of my truck, now. He didn't move. He just looked at me, that knowing smile never fading. We're in the middle of nowhere, he said calmly. You sure you want to do that? I pulled over hard, tires skidding on the shoulder. I don't care. Get out. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, he opened the door and stepped out. He stood there on the side of the road, holding the cardboard sign again. See you next time, Paul, he said. I didn't wait. I slammed the door, hit the gas, and got the hell out of there. I didn't look back. I didn't check my mirrors. I just drove. When I hit the next town, I stopped at a gas station, went inside, and locked myself in the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face, tried to calm down. My hands were shaking. I drove this route again, about a month later. I told myself I wouldn't think about it. I told myself it was nothing, just some weird guy messing with me. But when I got to that spot, that exact spot where I'd picked him up, I slowed down. I don't know why, I just did. And he was there, standing on the side of the road. Same sign, same smile. I didn't stop. I kept driving. But as I passed, I looked in my side mirror. He was waving. Word count, 1752. If you're still listening, you probably enjoy stories like this. A like or a comment helps keep them alive. There's a truck stop off Interstate 70 in Kansas that I used to hit all the time. It was one of those mid-sized places, nothing fancy, but it had good coffee, decent food, and clean showers. I'd stop there at least once a month, sometimes more, depending on my route. The people who worked there got to know me. I had a usual order, black coffee, 2 eggs over easy, bacon, toast. The waitress, Linda, always had it ready before I even sat down. I'm telling you this so you understand. I knew this place. I knew it well. This was about 3 years ago. I was hauling livestock feed from Kansas City to Denver, a route I'd done 1,000 times. It was early March, one of those days where winter hasn't quite let go yet. Cold, gray, a light drizzle making the roads slick. I'd left Kansas City around 5 in the morning and was making good time. By mid-morning, I was ready for a break. My back was stiff, my eyes were tired, and I needed caffeine. I knew the truck stop was coming up in about 10 miles. I'd planned my whole morning around it. I saw the exit sign, exit 238, same as always. I took the off-ramp, followed the road to the truck stop, and pulled into the parking lot. Except something was wrong. The building was different. Not completely different. It was still a truck stop. But the layout was off. The sign out front was different, some generic brand I didn't recognize. The building itself was bigger, newer, like someone had renovated it. The parking lot was full, more trucks than I'd ever seen there before. I sat in my cab, staring at it. This wasn't right. I'd been here a month ago, and it had looked completely different. I got out and walked inside. The interior was wrong, too. Everything was too clean, too modern. Shiny floors, bright lights, new booths. There was a different menu on the wall, different logos, different everything. The waitress behind the counter was someone I'd never seen before. Young, maybe mid-20s, with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Help you?" she asked. Yeah," I said, still trying to process. "Can I get a coffee?" "Sure thing." She poured me a cup and slid it across the counter. I took a sip. It didn't taste right. Too bitter. "Is Linda working today?" I asked. She frowned. "Who?" "Linda, the waitress. She's usually here in the mornings." "I don't know anyone named Linda. I've been working here for 6 months, and there's never been a Linda." "6 months?" I said. "What happened to the old place? When did they renovate?" She looked at me like I was speaking another language. "Renovate? This place has been here for years. Same as it's always been." I set the coffee down. "No, it hasn't. A month ago, this place looked completely different." She shrugged. "I don't know what to tell you, man. Maybe you're thinking of a different truck stop." "No," I said more forcefully than I meant to. "This is exit 238. This is the truck stop I always stop at." "Okay," she said slowly, backing away a little. "Whatever you say." I left. I didn't finish the coffee. I got back in my truck and sat there, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. This was the right exit. I was sure of it. But the truck stop was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. I pulled up the GPS on my phone, checked the location. Exit 238, Interstate 70, Kansas. This was the place. But it wasn't the place. I sat there for a while, trying to think of an explanation. Maybe I'd misremembered. Maybe the place had been renovated and I just hadn't noticed. But no, I'd been here a month ago. You don't forget a place you stop at all the time. Eventually, I gave up trying to figure it out. I got back on the highway and continued west. I had a delivery to make. I couldn't afford to waste time sitting in a parking lot, second-guessing my memory. A month later, I was heading back east, same route. I wasn't planning on stopping at that truck stop. I didn't want to deal with the weirdness again. But as I got close to exit 238, curiosity got the better of me. I had to see it again. I had to know if I was losing my mind. I took the exit, followed the road, pulled into the parking lot. And it was back, the old truck stop, the one I remembered. Same sign, same layout, same everything. It was like the renovated version had never existed. I sat there, staring at it. This couldn't be real. I got out, walked inside. Linda was behind the counter. "Hey, Paul," she said, smiling. "Long time no see?" "Usual." I just stared at her. "You okay?" she asked. "Linda," I said slowly, "have you been working here the whole time?" "What do you mean?" "I stopped here about a month ago, and there was a different waitress, blonde girl, early 20s. The whole place looked different." She frowned. "A month ago? I've been working here for 10 years, Paul. I'm here every morning." "No," I said. "I'm telling you, a month ago, this place was completely different." She looked concerned now. "Are you feeling all right? You look a little pale." I didn't answer. I turned around and walked out. I got in my truck and drove away. I didn't stop there again for a long time. But here's the thing. About 6 months later, I was talking to another driver at a rest stop in Colorado. We got to talking about weird stuff that happens on the road, and I mentioned the truck stop, just to see if he'd think I was crazy. He didn't laugh. He just looked at me, serious. "Exit 238, he asked. "Yeah." "Kansas?" "Yeah." He nodded slowly. "I know that place. Same thing happened to me. I stopped there twice, and it was different both times. First time, it was an old rundown place. Second time, brand new, totally renovated. Third time, back to old." "You're not screwing with me," I said. I swear, I thought I was losing it. But then I talked to another guy who said the same thing. He stopped there 3 times, saw 3 different versions of the place. We sat there in silence for a minute. "What do you think it is?" I asked. He shrugged. "Hell if I know. Some kind of glitch, like the place can't decide what it wants to be. I've stopped at that truck stop a few more times since then. Sometimes it's the old version, sometimes it's the new one. Once, it was something else entirely. A rundown, abandoned-looking building with boarded-up windows and a parking lot full of weeds. I didn't go inside that time." I don't know how to explain this without sounding insane, but I'm going to try. There's a stretch of highway in Montana between Billings and Miles City where I swear to God the road forgets you exist. I know how that sounds, believe me. But I've driven that route maybe 20 times in the last 5 years, and I'm telling you, something is wrong with it. It's not haunted, it's not cursed, it's something else, something worse. It's like the road doesn't want to remember you were ever there. The first time it happened, I thought I was imagining things. It was late November, just after Thanksgiving. I was hauling frozen goods from Seattle to Minneapolis, a route that takes you through some of the most desolate parts of the country. Montana in the winter is brutal, empty, freezing, endless. I'd been on the road for about 12 hours, and I was tired. Not dangerously tired, but enough that I was counting down the miles until I could stop for the night. I'd just passed Billings, heading east on Interstate 94. It was late afternoon, the sun already starting to dip below the horizon. The highway was empty. No cars, no trucks, just me and the road. About 30 miles outside of Billings, I noticed something strange. The highway markers were off. I'd passed mile marker 47, and then, 10 minutes later, I passed mile marker 47 again. I frowned. That didn't make sense. I checked my speedometer. I was going 65, same as I'd been going for the last hour. I should have been at mile marker 57 by now, maybe 60. I kept driving. A few minutes later, mile marker 47 again. I slowed down, checked my GPS. It showed me on I-94, heading east, making progress. But the mile markers didn't match. I should have been miles ahead by now. I pulled over onto the shoulder and got out. I stood there, staring at the highway. It stretched out in front of me, straight and empty. Behind me, the same. Nothing unusual, no signs of construction, no detours, nothing. I got back in the truck and kept driving. Mile marker 47. Again. I started to panic. This wasn't like the exit loop I'd heard other drivers talk about. This was different. I was moving forward, I could feel it, but the road wasn't acknowledging it. It was like I was stuck in place, even though I was driving. I tried everything. I sped up. I slowed down. I turned off the GPS and drove by sight alone. Nothing worked. Mile marker 47 over and over. I drove for what felt like hours. The sun set. The sky went black. I passed the same mile marker so many times I lost count. And then, finally, I saw something different. Mile marker 48. I almost cried. I don't think I've ever been so relieved to see a number go up. I kept driving, and the markers kept progressing. 49, 50, 51. Everything was normal again. By the time I hit Miles City, I was exhausted, shaking, my nerves completely shot. I checked into a motel and didn't sleep for hours. I told myself it was exhaustion, that I'd been on the road too long, that my brain had just glitched out. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I got stuck on the same mile marker for hours. They'd think I was crazy, but then it happened again. This was about 6 months later. Same route, same stretch of highway. It was summer this time. Broad daylight, and I was wide awake. I'd had a full night's sleep, plenty of coffee, no excuse for hallucinations. I passed mile marker 47. 10 minutes later, mile marker 47 again. This time, I didn't panic. I just drove. I knew what was happening. I knew there was nothing I could do about it, so I just kept going, kept my foot on the gas, and waited for it to stop. It took 2 hours. 2 hours of driving past the same mile marker before it finally let me go. I've talked to other drivers about it, quietly, carefully. Most of them think I'm full of it, but a very few, they know exactly what I'm talking about. One guy told me he'd gotten stuck on that same stretch of highway for 6 hours. He said he'd started to think he was going to be there forever, just driving and driving with nothing ever changing. He doesn't drive that route anymore. I still do. I have to. It's part of my job. And every time I hit that stretch between Billings and Miles City, I hold my breath and watch the mile markers. Most of the time, they're normal. But every once in a while, the thing that scares me most is this. What if, one day, the road doesn't let me go? What if I get stuck on mile marker 47 and just keep driving forever, passing the same spot over and over, unable to move forward or back? What if I'm already stuck and I just don't know it yet? Truckers have a thing about convoys. It's an old tradition. Kind of a relic from the CB radio days, but it still happens. You're on the highway, you see another truck going the same direction, you match speed, and suddenly you've got company. It makes the long hauls a little less lonely. Sometimes you chat over the radio, sometimes you just drive in comfortable silence. It's an unspoken brotherhood. I mention this because what happened to me involved a convoy, or what I thought was a convoy. This was in Wyoming, on Interstate 80, heading west toward Rock Springs. It was the middle of winter, January or February, one of those nights where the cold is so intense it almost feels like the air itself could shatter. I'd been driving since dawn, hauling machinery parts from Omaha to Salt Lake City, and I was somewhere around the halfway point. It was late, past midnight. The highway was empty, just me and the endless stretch of asphalt. I had my headlights on, cutting through the darkness, and the CB radio on low in case anyone was out there. That's when I saw the headlights in my rearview mirror. Another truck coming up fast behind me. I slowed down a little, let him pass, but he didn't. He just matched my speed, staying about 20 feet behind me. I glanced in my mirror, trying to see the truck, but all I could make out were the headlights. I keyed the CB. "Hey, driver behind me, you need to pass?" Static. I tried again. "Driver in the Freightliner, you there?" More static. No response. I frowned. Maybe his radio was off. Or broken. Either way, it wasn't a big deal. I kept driving. A few minutes later, I saw more headlights. Another truck pulling up beside me in the left lane. Same thing. He didn't pass, just matched my speed, driving parallel. Now I had one truck behind me and one beside me. It felt a little weird, but not threatening. Just odd. I tried the CB again. "Convoy forming up here? Anyone want to talk?" Nothing. A few more minutes passed and another truck appeared. This one pulled up in front of me, slowing down until it was about 20 feet ahead. Then it matched my speed. Now I had 3 trucks around me. One in front, one beside, one behind. All of them silent. All of them matching my speed exactly. I didn't like this. Something about it felt wrong. I slowed down, trying to break the pattern. They slowed down with me. I sped up. They sped up. I tried the CB again, more forcefully this time. "All right, guys, this is getting weird. What's going on?" Static, and then, faintly underneath the static, I heard something. A voice. It was hard to make out, distorted and faint, but it sounded like someone saying, "Keep driving." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What?" The voice came again, clearer this time. "Keep driving, don't stop." "Who is this?" I said. "What do you want?" No response, just static. I looked at the trucks around me. They were still there, perfectly positioned, none of them moving out of formation. I couldn't see the drivers. The cabs were dark, windows tinted or covered, just headlights and shadows. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to pull over, get off the highway, wait for them to leave. But that voice, "Keep driving, don't stop," something about it made me think that stopping would be a very bad idea. So I kept driving. We stayed like that for miles. The 3 trucks and me, locked in formation, driving through the empty Wyoming night. I kept checking my mirrors, kept trying the CB, but there was nothing. Just static and silence. And then, after what felt like an hour, but was probably only 20 minutes, something changed. The truck in front of me started to pull away. Slowly at first, then faster. Within a minute, it was gone, disappearing into the darkness ahead. The truck beside me did the same. It sped up, past me, and vanished. The truck behind me lingered for a moment longer, then dropped back. I watched in my mirror as its headlights grew smaller and smaller until they were gone. I was alone again. I exhaled, my hands shaking on the wheel. What the hell was that? I drove for another hour in complete silence, too rattled to turn the radio back on, too afraid to look in my mirrors. When I finally reached Rock Springs, I pulled into the first truck stop I saw and sat there for a long time, trying to calm down. I asked the other drivers if they'd seen anything strange on I-80 that night. Most of them just shook their heads. But one guy, an older driver with a grizzled beard, looked at me seriously. "You see the convoy?" he asked. "The what?" "The ghost convoy. Been stories about it for years. 3 trucks, driving in formation, middle of the night. They box you in, follow you for a while, then disappear." "Why?" He shrugged. "Some people say it's a warning. Keeps you awake, keeps you alert. Some say it's protecting you from something worse out there. And some say..." He trailed off. "What?" "Some say if you stop while they're around you, they take you with them. Wherever the hell they're going." I didn't drive I-80 in Wyoming for a long time after that. When I finally did, I made sure to do it during the day. I've never seen the convoy again, but sometimes, late at night on empty highways, I'll see headlights in my mirror, and for a second, just a second, I'll wonder if they're back. I'm going to tell you about a town called Harlow. I don't know if that's its real name anymore, or if it ever was. But that's what the sign said the first time I drove through it. This happened about 2 years ago. I was driving through Nebraska, hauling furniture from Omaha to Denver. It's a long, boring drive, mostly flat farmland and the occasional small town. Nothing exciting. I'd done this route dozens of times. It was late afternoon when I saw the sign, Harlow, population 847. I didn't recognize the name, but that didn't mean much. There are hundreds of little towns scattered across Nebraska, most of them barely more than a gas station and a post office. I figured Harlow was one of those. I wasn't planning on stopping, but I needed gas, and I saw a station on the main road as I drove through. It was a small town, just one main street with a few shops, a diner, a church. Normal. Quiet. A few people walking on the sidewalks, a couple of cars parked along the street. I pulled into the gas station, filled up, and went inside to pay. The clerk was an older man, maybe 60, with thinning gray hair and a flannel shirt. He rang me up, didn't say much, just the usual small talk about the weather. As I was leaving, I noticed a bulletin board near the door. It had the usual stuff: community events, yard sales, a lost dog poster. But one flyer caught my eye. It was for a town festival, something called the Harlow Harvest Days. The flyer was dated from 3 weeks ago. I didn't think much of it. I left, got back in my truck, and continued west. 3 months later, I was on the same route again. Same time of day, late afternoon, heading toward Denver. I saw the sign again: Harlow, population 847. I remembered stopping there before, so I decided to stop again. The gas station was in the same place, same layout. I pulled in, filled up, went inside. The clerk was the same guy. Same flannel shirt, same thin gray hair. "Back again?" he said as I handed him my card. "Yeah," I said. "I stopped here a few months ago." He nodded. "Thought you looked familiar." I glanced at the bulletin board near the door. Same flyers, same lost dog poster, same festival flyer for Harlow Harvest Days. But the date on the flyer was wrong. It said it was from 3 weeks ago, the exact same date as the last time I'd been there. I stared at it for a moment, confused. "Is this an old flyer?" I asked the clerk. "What?" "The festival flyer. This is from 3 months ago, right?" He looked at me like I was crazy. "No, that's from a few weeks ago. Why?" "I saw this exact flyer the last time I was here. 3 months ago." He frowned. "That doesn't make sense. We only put that up recently." I didn't argue. I just paid and left. As I drove through the town, I started noticing other things. The same cars parked in the same spots, the same people walking on the same sidewalks, even the same dog sitting outside the diner. It was like the town hadn't changed at all, like it had been frozen in time. I told myself I was overthinking it. Small towns don't change much. Maybe the same people park in the same spots. Maybe they wear the same clothes. Maybe the same flyers stay up for months. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I drove that route again about 6 months later. Same time of day, late afternoon. I saw the sign. Harlow, population 847. I didn't want to stop, but I had to know. I pulled into the gas station, same layout, same clerk, same flannel shirt. "Back again?" he said. The exact same words. I looked at the bulletin board. Same flyers, same festival flyer, same date. 3 weeks ago. I didn't say anything. I just paid and left. This time, as I drove through town, I paid closer attention. Same cars, same people, same dog. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold. One of the people walking on the sidewalk, a woman in a blue jacket. I'd seen her before, both times I'd been here. In the exact same spot, walking in the exact same direction. I slowed down, watching her. She was moving, walking normally, but something about it felt off. Like she was on a loop, like she was a recording playing over and over. I sped up and got the hell out of that town. I've driven that route a few more times since then. Every time I see the sign for Harlow, and every time I don't stop. But here's the thing. I looked it up. I searched for Harlow, Nebraska online. I checked maps, census records, everything I could find. There's no town called Harlow in Nebraska. There never was. Rest stops are weird places. There are these in-between zones where nobody wants to be, but everybody ends up eventually. You pull off the highway, use the bathroom, stretch your legs, maybe grab a vending machine snack, and then you leave. You don't think about them. They're just there. But there's one rest stop in Oklahoma off Interstate 40 that I can't stop thinking about. I don't know if it's still there. I don't know if it was ever really there, but I've been to it twice, and both times it was different. Wrong. The first time was about 4 years ago. I was heading east from Amarillo to Little Rock, a route I'd driven 100 times. It was late at night, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. I'd been on the road for hours, and I needed to stop. Not just for gas, but to stretch, to walk around, to wake myself up. I saw the sign for a rest stop coming up in 5 miles. I don't remember the name. Maybe it didn't have one. Just rest stop, 5 miles. I took the exit. The road leading to the rest stop was poorly lit, just a narrow strip of asphalt winding through dark trees. I could barely see anything beyond my headlights. When I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed it was empty. Completely empty. No cars, no trucks, nothing. Just a small brick building with a few flickering lights and a couple of picnic tables outside. I parked and got out. The air was cold, damp, like it had just rained. I could hear crickets, the distant hum of the highway, and nothing else. The building was small, just a bathroom facility. Men's room on one side, women's room on the other. There was a vending machine between them, humming softly. Half the lights inside it burned out. I walked toward the men's room. That's when I noticed something strange. There were no doors. Not broken doors. Not missing doors. Just no doors. The doorway was open, just an empty frame leading into darkness. I stopped, staring at it. That didn't make sense. Rest stops always have doors. For safety. For privacy. You don't just leave the bathrooms wide open. I took a step closer, peering into the darkness. I couldn't see anything. No lights, no sinks, no stalls. Just black. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shined it inside. The light didn't penetrate. It was like the darkness swallowed it. I could see the beam leaving my phone, but it just stopped. A few feet in, and then nothing. I backed away. Nope. I didn't need to use the bathroom that badly. I turned to leave, and that's when I heard it. A sound from inside the bathroom. Faint, distant, like it was coming from very far away. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, getting closer. I didn't wait to see what it was. I ran back to my truck, got in, locked the doors, and got the hell out of there. I didn't stop again until I hit the next town. I told myself it was nothing. An abandoned rest stop, a trick of the light. My imagination running wild because I was tired, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been in there, watching me. About 2 years later, I was on the same route. Same time of night. I wasn't planning on stopping at that rest stop again. I didn't even want to think about it. But as I passed the exit, something made me slow down. Curiosity, maybe. Or stupidity. I took the exit. The road leading to the rest stop was the same. Dark, narrow, winding through trees. I pulled into the parking lot, and this time there were other vehicles. A few cars, a camper van, another truck. Normal. I felt a little better seeing other people around. I got out and walked toward the building. The vending machine was still there, still humming. But this time, the bathrooms had doors. Normal, regular doors with signs on them. I felt a wave of relief. I'd been wrong. It was just a regular rest stop. I went inside the men's room. It was clean, well lit, normal. I used the bathroom, washed my hands, and left. As I walked back to my truck, I passed the women's room. The door was slightly ajar. I don't know why, but I glanced inside. There were no walls. The doorway led into an open space, just darkness stretching out forever, like looking into a void. I froze. That wasn't possible. I'd just been in the men's room. It was a normal building. How could the women's room be nothing? I took a step closer, my heart pounding. From inside the darkness, I heard it again. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. I backed away, got in my truck, and left. I haven't stopped at that rest stop since. I've driven past the exit a few times, but I never take it. A few months ago, I was talking to another driver and I mentioned it, just casually. You ever stop at that rest stop off I-40 in Oklahoma? The one with the weird bathrooms? He looked at me, confused. What rest stop? The one about 20 miles past the Texas border. Brick building, vending machine? He shook his head. I've driven that route for 10 years. There's no rest stop there. I checked. I pulled up maps, satellite images, everything I could find. He was right. There's no rest stop there, but I've been there. Twice. And I think something in there is still waiting. Way stations are a necessary evil for truckers. You pull in, they check your weight, make sure you're not overloaded, and if everything's good, you're on your way. It's tedious, but it's part of the job. Most of the time, it's quick. You're in and out in 10 minutes. But there's a way station in West Virginia, on Interstate 77, that doesn't work like that. I've been through it maybe a dozen times. Most of those times, it was normal. Quick check, friendly enough officers, no problem. But twice, something was wrong. The first time was about 3 years ago. I was hauling steel from Pittsburgh to Charlotte, a route I'd driven more times than I could count. It was early evening, sun just starting to set, when I saw the sign, Way Station 1 mile, all trucks must stop. I pulled in. There were a few other trucks ahead of me, going through the usual process. I waited my turn, pulled onto the scale, and waited for the light to turn green. It didn't. Instead, a voice came over the speaker. "Driver, please pull into Bay 3 for inspection." I frowned. I wasn't overweight. I'd checked my load twice before leaving Pittsburgh, but you don't argue with way station officers. I pulled into Bay 3 and waited. An officer came out. He was older, maybe late 50s, with a thick grey mustache and a no-nonsense expression. He walked around my truck, checking the tires, the lights, the straps holding down the load. "Everything looked good?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just kept inspecting, writing things down on a clipboard. After a few minutes, he walked up to my window. "How long have you been driving today?" "About 6 hours." "Where'd you start?" "Pittsburgh." He nodded, made another note on his clipboard. Then he looked at me, and his expression was strange. Not angry, not suspicious, just off. "You need to be careful," he said quietly. "What?" "On the road. Tonight. Be careful." I didn't know what to say. "Is there a problem with my truck?" "No," he said. "Your truck's fine. Just watch the road." He walked away before I could ask anything else. I sat there for a moment, confused. What the hell was that about? But the light turned green, and I was cleared to go, so I pulled out and got back on the highway. I didn't think much of it until about an hour later. I was driving through the mountains, a winding section of I-77 with steep drops on one side and sheer rock faces on the other. It was dark by then, my headlights cutting through the night. That's when I saw the car. It was coming toward me in the wrong lane, headlights blazing, swerving wildly. A drunk driver or someone having a medical emergency, I couldn't tell, but it was heading straight for me. I jerked the wheel to the right, barely avoiding a head-on collision. The car flew past me, missing me by inches, and disappeared into the darkness behind me. I pulled over, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. If I hadn't swerved, I'd be dead. No question. And then I remembered what the officer had said. Be careful. Watch the road. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known. The second time I went through that way station was about a year later. Same route, Pittsburgh to Charlotte. This time it was late at night, past midnight. I pulled in, went through the usual process. This time, I wasn't pulled aside. The light turned green, and I was good to go. But as I was pulling out, I glanced in my rear-view mirror. The officer, the same guy with the gray mustache, was standing at the edge of the way station, watching me leave. He raised his hand, like he was waving. But it didn't feel friendly. It felt like a warning. I drove faster than I should have that night. I didn't stop until I was out of West Virginia. I've been through that way station a few more times since then. Most of the time it's normal, but every once in a while I'll see that officer. And every time I do, something happens on the road. Not always a near miss like the first time. Sometimes it's smaller. A flat tire, a sudden storm, a road closure that forces me to take a detour. But it's always something. I don't know who he is. I don't know how he knows, but I've learned to listen. When he tells you to be careful, you be careful. I'm going to keep this one short because honestly, I still don't understand it. I was driving through Idaho, heading south on Highway 93. It was a normal day, mid-afternoon, clear skies. I stopped at a gas station just outside of Twin Falls to fill up and grab a coffee. The place was small, one of those mom-and-pop stations that's been there for decades. Old pumps, faded signs, but clean enough. I filled up my tank, went inside to pay. The clerk was an older woman, probably in her 70s, with thick glasses and a kind smile. She rang me up, handed me my receipt, and I left. I didn't look at the receipt until I was back on the road. I pulled it out of my pocket, planning to file it with the rest of my expense reports. That's when I noticed the date. It was dated 2 days in the future. I stared at it, checked my phone. Today was Thursday, June 12th. The receipt said Saturday, June 14th. I figured it was a mistake. The clerk must have accidentally set the date wrong on the register. It happens. No big deal. Except 2 days later, on Saturday, June 14th, I was driving through Idaho again. Same route, same time of day. And I stopped at the same gas station. I filled up, went inside to pay. Same clerk. Same kind smile. She handed me the receipt. I looked at it. Saturday, June 14th. The exact same date as the first receipt. I stood there, staring at both receipts. Same station, same pump number, same amount of gas, same total cost, down to the cent. I looked up at the clerk. Have I been here before? She smiled. I don't think so, hun, but I see a lot of drivers. Hard to remember everyone. I left, my hands shaking. I still have both receipts. I've compared them 100 times. They're identical, every detail. The timestamp, the pump number, the amount, the total. I don't drive through Idaho anymore if I can help it. This is the last story I'm going to tell you, and it's the one that scares me the most, because it's still happening. I drive a road between St. Louis and Nashville. It's a regular run, something I do twice a week, every week. I-64 to I-24, straight shot, about 5 hours depending on traffic. I've driven it so many times I could do it in my sleep, but about 6 months ago, something changed. I started seeing myself, not reflections, not hallucinations. Me, my truck, driving the same route, going the opposite direction. The first time it happened, I thought it was just another driver in the same model truck. I was heading east, just outside of Paducah, Kentucky, when I saw a truck coming toward me in the westbound lanes. Same make, same model, same color, even the same company logo on the side. I thought, what are the odds? And kept driving. But then I saw the license plate. It was mine. I slowed down, staring at it as it passed. The driver looked up at me at the same moment I looked at him. It was me. Same face, same jacket, same expression. I pulled over, my heart racing. I sat there for 10 minutes, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. It wasn't possible. I couldn't have seen myself. That wasn't how reality worked. Eventually, I convinced myself it was a trick of the light, a coincidence. Someone who looked like me, driving a truck that looked like mine. But it happened again. A week later, same route, same spot. I saw my truck coming toward me. I saw myself driving it. This time, I didn't pull over. I just kept driving, my eyes locked on the truck as it passed. And as it did, the other me looked over. He smiled. I haven't told anyone about this. What would I even say? I keep seeing myself on the highway. They'd think I was crazy. But it keeps happening. Every time I drive that route, I see myself. Sometimes heading the opposite direction, sometimes behind me. Once, I saw my truck parked at a rest stop as I drove past. I looked in the window. I was sitting in the driver's seat, asleep. I don't know what this means. I don't know if I'm losing my mind or if something stranger is happening. But I think maybe every time I drive that route, I split. Part of me goes east, part of me goes west. And somewhere out there, there's another version of me. Driving the same road, seeing the same things, wondering what the hell is going on. I still drive that route. I have to. It's my job. But every time I do, I wonder, which one am I? The original or the copy? And what happens when we finally meet?